All right, let's get into a practical example of storytelling and how you can do it in your own business, be it for your list, your social media, for clients and selling, doesn't really matter. We'll go in depth in an actual example that I recently used. As you can see, I opened a Twitter thread that I recently wrote. Let me give you some background to this. What I wanted to do was to turn a rather mundane experience, something that wasn't special at all, into a thread and make it interesting to see, like, if I could do it. Like, can you turn a normal experience basically into a riveting story, something that gets people's blood flowing, something that makes people say, yeah, I want to know more. And I think I did it. Got some good feedback on this. People liked it. So let's go over what really happened behind the scenes. So the real experience, and then we'll see what I turn it into. So I went on a date with a nice girl, and somewhere during the date she mentioned something about a ramen restaurant. Now, I'm very white, as you can see, and I had never really gone to, like, I had like the noodles from the store where you just add hot water, but I assume like the ramen was a little more involved than pot noodles. So, being a misogynist pig, I told her that ramen was lame and it was peasant food, and it was basically Japanese spaghetti soup. Like, I mean, you just, have some broth and some dough, and you mix it together, chuck in some ingredients, and that's it. You're done. Now, she disagreed, very haram, but it it was done in a playful manner. Like, we were on a date. I was being me, so I was sort of teasing, right? And the date went very well. And when I got back from that first date, we continued doing some banter because I liked her. And we talked about the ramen thing as if it was a meme. And I decided to post something on Twitter about it. In fact, let me find that right now. So here's what I posted. This is a question I did. Need some help with a very white question about ramen. And then I sort of give my summary about it, right? And basically asking what's so special about it. And I get some responses, like it's a brokey meal, can be good, it's okay. I get one response, what a stoic approach to ramen. It's funny. I love ramen. And for whatever reason, I can't find the response now, but there was a response. I'm pretty sure there was a response from someone saying something like, if it's made well, it's like getting a blowjob from Aphrodite, like the Greek love goddess. I thought that was a very funny response. And honestly, a very intriguing one as well. I've never had a blowjob from a Greek goddess before, so I don't have much to compare it to. Anyhow, so I put this up as a, like, I'm having fun, right? And I told the chick that, I put it up and that the results were mixed. Like, some people liked it, some people didn't, whatever, right? So next time I see her, I still had to get a bite to eat. So I say, let's go to the ramen place. We go there. It's packed, which is always a good sign. Lots of Asian people there, also a good sign, I assume. We get the food, and it's actually pretty good. I have to admit, it's actually pretty good. Get some side dishes. I asked the waiter for the best recommendation. She recommends something. I say, sure, go for it. We eat it. It's good. And then that's basically it. So what we have to work with in this case is someone suggests a restaurant. I'm not impressed. I ask for feedback. Feedback is mixed. I decide to go. It's actually pretty good. This is not like high stakes. No one is dying. No one is hurt. There's no massive conflict there. So, as you can see, in order to turn this into a story, we have to do some work. Like, we have to get some tension going somehow. So, let's see how we did it. In the beginning of your story, you want to make sure there's a hook. There's something that reels them in. Now, this is the same as it is on phone, as it is in person, as it is in social media. Obviously, social media has sped this up, has made this even more important than it used to be. But you can't assume that just because you're going to tell a story, someone's going to lean back and give you half an hour to explain whatever you have to explain. You have to get some investment in there, get them interested. So I start out by saying, confession time. So I'm confessing something. And then I say I found out that I was wrong about something, and that, it's shocking, that I can be wrong about something. And then, like so many other stories of man's downfall, this one involves a beautiful woman. Now, what do? We have confession in there. We have some funny arrogance in there, saying, how can I be wrong? We hint at the downfall, which is an interesting word. People recognize it. It's a powerful word. It has all sorts of connotations built in there. But there has been a downfall somehow. And we have a beautiful woman. And, most of my audience is men. Men like beautiful women in general. So, we're off to a great start. So in terms of storytelling, this is the hook. This is the way we reel them in. The bait, basically, for them to read on. Because especially on Twitter, but Instagram would be the same. In person would be the same. Every nugget that you use should be feeding into the next one. Should make them go, okay, what's next? What's the next step? You don't want to have them reading something and then thinking, yeah, so what? This isn't interesting. And when we get a little bit more down in the story, I'll show you an example where I actually made that mistake, and you'll immediately see it as sort of a drop-off point. But we'll get there. So we have confession time. We have the whole hook. All right. So now the next step is we have to sort of set the stage. I have to tell you, what's this about? Like, what am I even talking about? In terms of storytelling, now we're getting to the first act, the setup. So here we go. A very pretty young lady suggested we go out for ramen. And as you can see, we go out for ... ramen, insinuating that it's a disappointment, because it's ramen. I dismiss this as a horrible idea for two reasons. And as you can see, it's because there's not much of a story, we have to make it funny, right? So the first one is women offering you food is very suspect by default. Adam got kicked out of paradise after biting in that apple. Do you remember? Now, the absolute vast majority of people are going to know what I'm talking about. Like, if you don't, you're missing some history, brother. But the vast majority of people are going to know what I'm talking about. It's also clear that I'm being funny. I'm being facetious, not being serious. And because I'm saying there's two reasons, and I'm only giving you one in this snippet, in this nugget, again, there's a reason to read on, right? So, but more importantly, then we go to the second one. Ramen seemed like an extremely lame choice. Extremely lame is funny in itself. Like, it's super mediocre. And then it's just Japanese spaghetti soup, which, if you like ramen, I assume that's like a massive insult. But in a way it is, right? If you would put spaghetti in soup, that would basically be ramen. Some broth, some strands of dough, random stuff, done. Lame. I like using the word lame. If you've seen some of my stuff, you know that. And then, again, we've given the two reasons. And now I have to give you a reason to read on. So I say, despite my airtight mansplaining, which is a funny sentence, right? Airtight mansplaining. That's not something you would normally say. She kept hyping it up. So I did what any sane person would do. And again, I'm leading into the next nugget, the next step, the next paragraph in this case. I asked my Twitter bros about ramen. See how we're moving the story forward? Because the only thing that has happened until now is her bringing it up, me saying it's dumb, and then now I'm asking my audience, like, what's with the ramen stuff? And some people say it's good, some people say it's peasant food. And one dude said it's like getting a blowjob from Aphrodite, which is slightly intriguing. Could I be wrong? Surely not. Only one way to find out. Again, this leads into the next step. Again, right? And what you can see, which is interesting, you can see the likes, right? Obviously, the first message has the most likes. But then you have 35, you have 24, you have 22, all right? Next one is 28. So, people like that, apparently. Because you would assume the likes to sort of drop off, but previous one at 22, now we have 28. All right, let's see what it looks. Take her to the ramen place, packed with Asian people. My date is half Asian, blends in perfectly. I'm easily the whitest guy there, so I stand out like a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. I have no idea where I picked up that line, but it's funny, so I used it. And by the way, let's talk about poetic license for a moment. I wasn't the only white guy there. There are more white people there. I didn't stand out. But it's funny. Like, the idea is just funny, right? Being me, sitting there, surrounded by people, with perfect chopstick skills and locals. And it's just standing, the idea of standing out is funny. So I put it in there. This is poetic license. Like, you can exaggerate certain parts of your story just fine, as long as they don't mess with the whole message of it. So, and in this case, it worked perfectly. So, one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. And then I take all of this as a good sign. Now, again, this leads into the next thing, because the only thing that I've done is I've told you that I went to the restaurant and I stood out. That's it, right? Next one. Restaurant isn't fancy. Menu's pretty basic. Staff is competent. My date is pleasant and bubbling with excitement. Good vibes all around. I feel myself warming up to this whole ramen thing. See what happens now. This has 17 likes. Now, compare this to the 28 of the message before. This is a great example of a spot in your storytelling where you can noticeably see that interest is dropping off. This isn't interesting. It isn't controversial. It isn't very funny. It's just me saying things are going well. But in a story in general, you don't want to say things are going well. There has to be, stakes and conflict and something brewing and moving the story forward. So this was probably the weakest part of the whole story. Looking back, I should have done this differently. I informed the waiter I'm a ramen virgin. That's okay. That's somewhat funny. She recommends it. I go for it. Add some sides, beer, I'm off to the races. Food looks sexy. Tastes even better. And I include a picture. Now, this has some more likes, but it's still, there's no conflict brewing, right? It has a picture, though. That's good. And by the way, it looks pretty good. Like, I genuinely enjoyed that food. We had some like Japanese fried chicken and some other chicken, and then that's not on the picture, but they also had octopus balls. And of course I ordered that. I don't know if it was the actual balls of an octopus. I don't even know if octopuses, I don't know, octopussy have balls. Anyhow, so go to the next one, which has considerably more likes again, right? Turns out that, contrary to popular belief, Arno can actually be wrong. Who knew? Ramen isn't just Japanese peasant food, it's pretty damn good. Although it wasn't like getting a blowjob from a Greek goddess. You need to figure that part out with your date. Now, why does this have more likes than the previous one? I don't know. It's probably more funny, right? It's somewhat self-deprecating, but it's funny, and it has a BJ in it, so that'll probably do well. But it's something that moves it forward again. And then there's the but, ... Because you want to lead into the next thing. The story is sort of over, right? Went to the restaurant, I said no, then I went anyway. Then I went there and it was great. Food was good. So you want to lead them into the next thing. Threads are supposed to have a lesson, something profound. And this thread has 2 lessons. Now this is remarkable because until now, nothing has really happened, right? I mean, the lesson, it can't be much of a lesson, really. And now I'm saying there's two. So let's do it. One, if a woman offers you an apple, don't go for it. This is the Adam and Eve thing, right? Especially if she's naked, like Eve, or looks like a witch. I think that's from Snow White and Seven Dwarfs or something. I don't know. Or something like that, right? Literature is pretty clear on this one. Also, see how the end of every snippet leads into the next? That's a thing that you usually do. You want to keep the attention high. If a beautiful woman offers you something you haven't tried before, try it out. You might be pleasantly surprised. Now, originally, my first draft, that was it. But that's a little boring, right? And I'm trying to be funny with the thread. It's a funny story, somewhat, but using the language, etc. So I couldn't really end it there. So I decided to add something else. Or you might get robbed and stabbed in an alleyway by her three brothers. Just roll the dice, I guess. It'll be a new experience either way. This one has the most likes. Maybe because it's the end. That'll probably help. I don't know. But also because it's just funny. Like it's a lesson, but it's not a lesson, right? You just, the reason that it's funny is because it's sort of self-contradictory. Like if someone offers you something, just go for it. That's the lamest, most self-help advice ever. And if I end up with that, it would be pretty lame. But instead I say, if someone offers you something, go for it. Or, alternatively, you might get killed by your brothers. But just go for it anyway. It'll be fun. It'll be new. And then you have the end. And if you want to look at, like, how can I structure a story? How can I make it interesting? Maybe funny, maybe profound. Because it doesn't have to be funny, right? I can also tell non-funny stories. I just enjoy doing this sort of stuff. And if it's about nothing, usually a comedy format is the best format. It's not the easiest one, though, but it is the best one. It doesn't take itself too seriously. Because that's a thing on Twitter and on LinkedIn as well, where people are so full of themselves that, they don't even see the fun in anything that they're doing anymore. Anyhow, main takeaways. One, if you're going to present a story, it makes sense to think about, like, where do I start? What's the conflict? How do I resolve it? In this case, we start out with the hot, beautiful young woman wanting to go for ramen. And then the conflict is me saying, no, ramen is super lame. Doesn't make any sense. Why would I go eat Japanese spaghetti soup? That's stupid. And then the resolve, like the result, the ending of the story is me going there and learning a lesson, growing as a man, as a protagonist, by realizing, wow, I was wrong. It is actually possible. I thought I was right about everything. Turns out, even I can be wrong about something. That's sort of the comedic lesson in there. This will be the same with any story that you tell. It's going to be beginning, middle, end, and you want to have a payoff somewhere. Also, every single snippet, paragraph, maybe even sentence, needs to lead into the next one. And you need to watch where people drop off. Like this is what we saw with the messages that didn't have any conflict in them. There was no tension in there. Like before, when I arrive at the restaurant, I'm the whitest guy there. There's some conflict in there. There's some excitement, like being the oddball there, the odd one out. And before this one, it's me saying, this is a horrible idea. This is dumb. Like there's always some friction going on. Take away the friction, and it gets boring. Here, good vibes, boring. This has a picture at least, but still, they bring it out as boring. Like if I had to rewrite it, if I had to improve it, I would insert some sort of friction, fun, conflict in there just to keep the story going. We did fine anyway, but it's always good to look at your own story and see, where do people drop off? So at the end of every snippet should be something that leads them into the next snippet. End of every paragraph, end of every sentence. So they get lured in. It needs to be like a water slide, just sliding down until they reach the end. and they're happy with their short ride that they've just taken. So remember, story structure. And last thing I want to talk about is to think about like the words that you use. This is especially in a written format where it's very noticeable and easy to see. But even in a spoken format, there's a difference between saying, hey, there's something I have to tell you, and I have a confession to make. Totally different things. Can't even compare those two. Like there's so much emotion and charge with that I have a confession to make. It sort of signals that you've done something bad or something you don't feel good about. So now you want to say it. Similar, and like so many other stories of man's downfall, this one involves a beautiful woman. You could have said that 1,000 different ways. Could have said, I could have followed up like I was wrong. A chick showed me that I was wrong or something. But that isn't funny. That isn't intriguing. That doesn't force me to read on. We're making it a grand thing, like man's downfall. I'm talking about a ramen place. There was no downfall. It wasn't like Judas betraying Jesus. But the whole connotation of downfall, especially because it's a funny story, I'm not being serious about it, and people will see that immediately, gives it like a new layer of interest, of intrigue. So I connected to the Adam and Eve story that most people know. Then I give a funny description of ramen, broth, strands of dough, random ingredients, that's it. Basically, I mean, you can sort of describe any dish in a funny way if you want. Like a ribeye is just a fatty piece of dead cow. That's it. Take any dish out there and you can describe it in a very clinical or almost autistic kind of way, and it makes it funny. And what you want to strive for in every part of your story is to add something in there that gets the senses going. Like when I say the blowjob from a Greek goddess, that is not something that we usually say to each other. I stole that from one of the comments, though. That wasn't my creativity. I couldn't find it now, but there is a comment somewhere that says that. Blowjob from a Greek goddess. That's amazing. Japanese spaghetti soup is funny. One-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. That's funny. It's a visual. You can sort of imagine it, and the whole idea about it is funny, right? Airtight mansplaining. And these are the things that elevate your story to the next level, really. These make it funny. The words. Using words with an added layer of meaning to it. So usually what I do when I want to tell a story, when I write a thread, for example, I just have a basic doc open, like a notepad doc, like the simplest of the simplest. And I just write down like the sort of the beats, like the start, middle, ending. And I write it out. And I look at it. And then you look at the words and you think about like what would be a better word, what would be a more funny word, what would be a better way to explain this, to describe this. And like I said before, like originally the end was, let's see. Yeah. If a beautiful woman offers you something you haven't tried before, just try it out. You might be surprised. That was the end. But it's way funnier if I say, try it out, you might be pleasantly surprised, or you get stabbed by your three brothers in an alleyway. That's way funnier, because it undermines the whole, like the sort of cheesy, corny lesson. But that's something you see in the second draft usually, or the third draft. So you start out with beginning, middle, end, writing it out, then looking at the message and asking yourself, how can I make this more interesting? And then seeing where does the message break up, like which paragraphs are there, are some sentences running on too long, how do they flow into each other? And that's the struggle of coming up with a great story. But any experience, I hope you see, based on this, any experience can be turned into a good, interesting story that people actually read And when they're done reading, they say, yeah, that was fun. That was a good ride. Good chuckle. Very important skill for basically being a more interesting guy, which is also one of the main skills in business. Like, people want to do business with you if you're an interesting dude. People want to do business with leaders. Want to do business with people that intrigue them. And storytelling, being able to tell a riveting story, having people read your stuff, it's one of the absolute best ways to stand out from your competition. Go tell your stories. The world needs more stories.